So let me introduce you. Our first keynote speaker held senior positions at Barclays Bank for several years, where he learned his negotiation skills. He furthered his skills by going to Harvard Business School, and now he's the author of 10 books. His signature book, Win-Win, has been sold all over the world and has been translated into Chinese and Arabic. As a professional speaker on negotiation, he's the holder of the top 3 awards from his industry body, the Professional Speaking Association. And on top of that, he still has time for weekly broadcasts on negotiation and motivation. Today, he's addressing the 7 habits of highly effective negotiators. And you can see him on screen. So please welcome to the stage, Derek Arden.
Wow, thank you, Sonia. What a great pleasure and honour it is to be with you and to be your opening keynote speaker. I'm here in Guildford in Surrey, and I'd be really interested where you are. So if you could pop that in the chat box, perhaps we could see who the furthest person away from me is. Let me tell you a little bit about negotiations. I was working for Barclays, and I thought I was a good negotiator. And suddenly I had to go to Tesco, the largest retailer in the UK at the time, and they threw me out of the meeting in 30 seconds for not reducing my price on a £1 million contract. And I was sitting on Cheshunt Station. For those of you that know North London, it's not a very pleasant place. Musing over what I'd done wrong, how I could learn more. And it suddenly had that wake up moment which said, you thought you were a good negotiator, Derek, but actually you're an average negotiator, and how good is good enough? And that's what I want to ask you today, wherever you are. How good is good enough as a negotiator? Because we're negotiating all the time. We're negotiating with our family, with our kids. Kids are fantastic negotiators. If we haven't got kids, with our nieces and nephews, our mums, our dads, our grannies, and everybody, because everything is negotiable. So that day I went into London and I went into a bookshop and I bought a book by a Scottish gentleman called Gavin Kennedy. That book was called Everything is Negotiable. And I want you to think about that title, Everything is Negotiable, because some people have a fear of negotiating. Sometimes people don't like to ask. If you don't ask, you don't get. Of course, we all know that. That's what we tell kids. And therefore, think about that in your mind. So that's the first takeaway I'd like you to think about. Everything is negotiable. Now, I know some of you are really good negotiators, and that's fantastic. Congratulations. Well done. But how good is good enough for you? So if you score yourself as an 80, and I'm going to ask you to score yourself in a minute, how does that work out? So having lost that Tesco contract because they walked away, having to explain to the chairman of Barclays why I'd lost it, I then went out and bought some tapes. Yes, and they were tapes in those days. Yeah, I'm old enough to remember cassette tapes. And if you do, give me a wave, please. And then CDs, and now on audio. And I listened to everything. And I realized this would be a fantastic subject to teach, to speak on, to educate people all around the world. And I've been able to do that since I negotiated my way out of Barclays. So I want to share the 7 habits of highly effective negotiators, my take on it with you. And I want you to take action on it after this. And the action is to go out and negotiate something, and to go out and ask, and to go out and do something different. Because if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. Now I'm going to do the clever thing and share my screen, and let's see if it works. Host is disabled, participant share screen is coming up at the moment. So if someone could take care of that for me, that would be fantastic. It's still coming up, host is disabled screen sharing. So if someone could do that for me, Sonia, if you could fix that and tell me when it's fixed. And in the meantime, I will carry on without my slides. Oh, I've got screen sharing now, so that's great. So you should be seeing my screen now, and I've just got to change that into the big view, which I'm doing. As a professional presenter, things don't always work, and as we know on Zoom, they don't necessarily work to plan. When they don't work, and as speakers, the advice I would give you, and this is the advice I've had from speakers all around the world, the mentors that I've studied, and Patricia Fripp's one of my mentors actually, and you're going to be listening to her, seeing her from San Francisco later in the day. So if something goes wrong, just talk the audience through with it. Just keep cool. So 7 habits of highly effective negotiators. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to say to yourself, what does that say? Opportunity is nowhere. Or does it say opportunity is now here? And of course, it depends where you put the W, whether your cup's half full, half empty. Is opportunity here, or is it nowhere? Now, I know you're all motivated people, but so many people aren't motivated. So I just wanted to show you that. So if you can change someone's life, if you can change their state today, if you can change how they feel, that would be absolutely fantastic. So the 7 habits: number 1, preparation; number 2, questioning; number 3, listening; number 4, reading the signals, suss it out where the other side is coming from; the psychology of tactics of bargaining; and of course, number 7 is confidence, because you've got to be confident. But if you don't practice, if you don't rehearse, if you don't study this subject, which is absolutely crucial to all business interaction, it's in fact, after presenting and pitching, it's the second most important soft skill that you can have to, if you're in business, to get a decent deal. And of course, if you're working for somebody else, to negotiate your salary. Do you know, most people don't negotiate their salaries in the UK. They think that it's fixed, and they think that the boss, whatever they want to give them, is right. So I've written a book on how to negotiate your salary a long time ago, which was great fun. It's quite easy. As I've said before, and I'll say to you, if you want the advice on anything, send me a quick email, and as long as it gets through the system, because we know emails get lost, up to 20% of emails get lost, I will answer it when I get a chance to do that. So what I'd like you to do now is to put in the chat box where you see yourself, what on this scale, where do you see yourself as a negotiator on a score of 0 to 100? Some people score themselves as low as 20. Some people score themselves as high as 90. If you're scoring yourself 95, perhaps you'd like to take over this seminar from me, because you obviously know more than I do. And in fact, I'm learning all the time. And why are we learning about negotiation? Because it covers every area of interpersonal skills. And whoever's monitoring the chat box, and I think it's Lynn, is going to tell us how those scores are coming in a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to alert you to the word negotiation in the English language as the word ego, sitting right in the middle. And can I ask you to put your egos away when you're negotiating? Flatter, chat up, build rapport, whatever language we want to use the other person, because the most important person is you, and we know that. So if you're trying to influence, negotiate, sell to someone, then it's really important that you consider where they're coming from. And as Dale Carnegie said, the most important person in the world is you. And if you can help other people get what they want, then you can get what you want. I'd also like you to put in the chat box how old you think that lady is. Is she 75 or is she 25? And what we're talking about today is psychology, putting yourself in the other person's shoes. Do you know different people see different ages of that woman? And that was a drawing done in 1914 by a psychologist in France. And people see different things. I was speaking on a webinar on Thursday, and the average was that 78% of people thought that was a young woman, and 22% saw her as an old woman. I'm showing you that because in any negotiation, we have different perceptions of where the other side's coming from. And how do we find out where they're coming from? We ask them. So I don't know if we've got any scores there coming in and whether we can share those, or we'll share those at the end.
I do, Derek. And on the first question, most people were on the upper half in terms of their skills as negotiators. I'm going to guess that the average is around 67.3. And 67.3.
Brilliant, Sonia.
That is the average. And on the question of the lady, majority people are placing her in mid-20s, but some people can see old and the young lady, so mid-20s and 70s to 80s. So really both ends. And just back to the first question, I thought it was interesting that somebody said they score 0 as a negotiator with their ex-wife.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's really interesting. Sonia, thank you for that. Sonia, how's the time going? I didn't check when you finished introducing me. Are we about 15 minutes into it?
We are 9 minutes into it.
9 minutes into it. How time flies when you're enjoying yourself. Thank you very much indeed, Sonia. While we're talking about this, negotiating tactics are very interesting. I'm going to come to negotiation tactics in a minute, but there's something called verisimilitude in the English language, which means it looks as if it's okay, basically. That's the basic translation of it. I'm not explaining that very well. But if you put a price on the table of £100, $100, 100 rupees or whatever, and the other person asks you for a discount, and you give them a discount of 10%, a nice round number, guess what they'll be thinking? They'll be thinking, I can probably get some more. That's a bit of a round number. But if they give you a discount of 8.7% or 6.7%, relating it to that number, what do you think? Well, you think, wow, hang on a minute. They've calculated that carefully. That's probably as far as they go. And in negotiation tactics, that's called funny money. And I write about the tactics extensively in my book, Win-Win. So let's go back to what stops many people negotiating. Number one, they don't like conflict. Number two, they're afraid to ask. If you don't ask, you don't get. And if you don't ask, you don't give the other person the opportunity of saying yes to you. And number three, they lack confidence. And because this is such a vital business skill, therefore we always need to up our negotiation skills. And let's be fair, it's not just a business skill, it's a life skill, it's a personal skill, it's a relationship skill. It affects everything we do in life. So that's why I was so passionate about teaching this subject as soon as I left Barclays, and that's why I took myself off to the Harvard Business School to study negotiations at that time. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like you to think about this. I almost stopped showing this slide, and then I realized that the younger people got, the more they felt they should be negotiating by email. Now, we know, don't we, that email is the worst form of communication. And we actually know that face-to-face is the best form of communication. So looking at this slide, number one, best way to negotiate is obviously face-to-face. Bit tricky at the moment, isn't it? And therefore Zoom is really, really effective. So when a client says, emails me, I immediately set up a Zoom call with them so I can look at them, see them. And there's some tips about selling, influencing on Zoom, as you probably know. Number one, don't forget to dress for success. You might be wondering why I've got a suit, a shirt and a tie on today. Well, you can always dress down, but you can never dress up. And therefore it's really important, if you're expensive, if you're charging high fees or charging a high salary or whatever, then you need to look the part. And I can always take my tie off, I can always take my jacket off and dress down, but oh boy, I can't dress up. And it's exactly the same with pricing, which we'll come to in a minute. You can always bring your price down, but you can never put your price up once you mention it. So if you go for a new job and they say, how much do you want? And they go £50,000. Oh, that's all right, I can pay you that straight away. What are you going to be thinking? I wish I'd have asked for 60. So face-to-face and Zoom. And the other trick on Zoom is that people don't do. They don't look down the camera. They look at themselves in the picture. And you've got to look at the camera like I'm looking at you, because if you're going to influence someone, and that's what negotiation's all about, you're going to have to look them in the eye, and they have to think that you're looking them in the eye. Number three, there is a telephone. This almost out of service thing used for emails, texting, WhatsApp and everything else, hardly ever used for phoning people. If I get a toxic email, and you all know what I mean by a toxic email, one of those emails that upsets us, gets us a bit mad, they usually come on later in the day when we're tired. Here's my advice to you. Call the person straight away and say, hello, Bob. I've just got your email. I'm curious where you're coming from. Ladies and gentlemen, the word curious is phenomenal. In my NLP training, I learned, and I went NLP training because I wanted to fit that in to my negotiation skills. That's the same time as I joined the Professional Speaking Association to see how the best speakers, like you're in Toastmasters, see how the best speakers did it. That's when I met my friend Patricia Fripp that you'll see this afternoon. I realized that words like curious, I am wondering, are not threatening words that upset people. And when you're negotiating, you need to use soft language. And sometimes you need to lower your voice when you're asking difficult things. And then we come to emails and instant messaging and WhatsApp, which people think it's the way you negotiate. Let me tell you, it's not. Full stop. Okay, so tip number 1, negotiating, the 7 habits of highly effective negotiators. Number 1 is preparation. Proper preparation prevents pretty poor performance. Ladies and gentlemen, fail to prepare, prepare to fail, and all those lovely words. But one of the things that's absolutely crucial when you're negotiating in your preparation is to think about your positions. And what do I mean by that? Number 1, what's the best position you can obtain out of this negotiation? What's your target position? And what's your walkaway position if you fail to get an agreement at that price? And if you do fail to get an agreement at that price, what's your alternative position? Sometimes in business books, in Harvard books, it's called a BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement. I couldn't quite understand what they really meant by that, and I didn't think it explained it very well as a communicator. And of course, it means if you walk away, what are you going to do with your time? What are you going to do with your money? How are you going to get another job? What will that job pay? Will you get a better quality of life working from home or working in the country versus working in the city where you've got to commute and travel to work? So think about that in your preparation. And there's lots of other things we could talk about preparation, but sadly we don't have time today. But brainstorm your agendas. Now, the other thing I would say is I'm a serial mind mapper, ladies and gentlemen. There's the mind map of today. I've made a slide of it about half an hour ago so I could put it in there. And those of you that know mind maps and know how useful they are just so useful for preparing, for handling things when you're under pressure, etc., etc. And you can, I'm sorry it's difficult to read, but that's my live mind map for today, which I've got just down here as well. Number 2, ask questions. The quality of the questions you ask determines the quality of the answers you get. High-powered questions generally begin with what and how or tell me about. So what is it you're trying to achieve? How can we resolve this? What deal have you got from the other side? What's your thinking on this matter? How can we get to a win-win deal? The quality of the questions you ask determines the quality of the answers you get. Number 3, listening. Wow. Do you know most people don't listen? They say most people want a good talking to. They don't want a good talking to. They want a good listening to. Listening with your 2 ears and your 2 eyes, watching the body language. It's 5 times more difficult to lie with your body language than it is with the words. Yet people say, oh, will you go ahead with this, Derek? And they don't notice my body language. When it goes back, I fold my arms. That's a serious negative. Defending my heart, folding my arms, etc. And let me ask you a quick question. Please put the answer in the chat box. How many animals of each species did Moses take into the ark? Now, guess what? Most people think the answer to that question is 2 when I ask it. And of course, from the Bible, from the fairy tale, from the metaphor, whatever it was, I don't know. Moses never had an ark it was Noah that had an ark. So if you were caught doing that, you weren't listening to exactly what I was saying, because I said, how many animals of each species did Moses take into the ark? Professional negotiators like me listen to everything that people are saying. Tip number 4, read.
I'm very pleased to let you know that, yeah, most people realize that they were saying Noah, not Moses. So our interview.
Oh, okay, well, brilliant. That just shows what a clever audience we've got on today, Sonia from Toastmasters. What a privilege. But let me tell you that most people don't get that answer. So we've really got the lifelong learners on today on a Saturday morning, giving up their valuable time. So that's fantastic. Thank you, Sonia. So that's Lauren. You're negotiating with Lauren. How are you getting on is my question. Well, you're not getting on very well, are you? We can't make this interactive, but I'd normally stop and let people tell me what her body language was saying, with her narrowed eyes, a pouted mouth, her folded arms. And while you're just sitting there on your own in your home, I'd just like to fold your arms like I'm doing. I'd like to know if you're a left over arm folder like me, or a right over left folder, which I find quite difficult to do. Now I'd like you to fold your arms the other way like I'm doing, and just say, how do you feel? Because we've either been folding left or right for the whole of our lives. And if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So step outside the box from today and do things differently, and ask for discounts and ask for higher deals. Okay, let's talk about the tactics of negotiating tactics and influencing. I'm only going to talk about a couple. I've listed 35. I blog and write about them. Follow me, please, on all my social media channels. I'd love to hear from you. Email me. Sonia will give you the details of that afterwards. The number one tactic that works really well is good guy, bad guy linked to higher authority. It's 2 tactics, actually. I'd love to do this with you, for you, Mr. Customer, because I'm the good person. But the committee, my people, the association, Toastmasters board, whoever will not agree that at that price. What can you do to help me? And watch my sort of Bill Clinton presidential sort of body language as it goes to the heart. That's good guy, bad guy linked to higher authority. Tactic number 2 that I wanted to tell you about is flinching. Now, when someone puts the price on the table, or when someone makes you a counter offer, just do this. That was a bit more expensive than I was expecting to pay. Now, Khrushchev at the United Nations banged the table with his shoe, and as we know, halfway around half the world, putting your shoe on the table is one of the biggest insults that you can give people. But again, just that little flinch. Are you ready? Practice this. If we were in a hall with 600 of you, I'd be making you do this. A bit more expensive than I was expecting to pay. And the last tactic is my favorite, the Columbo tactic. Peter Falk, the actor that played Columbo in the television series, when he said, I don't quite understand this. I'm not quite sure where you're coming from. Could you run that past me again? Because if they're spinning it, or if they're BSing you, or you don't quite understand what they're saying, then get them to repeat it again. Tactic number 6, habits of highly effective negotiators, bargaining and haggling. And conditional bargaining is what we call when we give something away and ask for something in return. So if you're giving something away at a negotiation, if I agree to let you come in at 10:30 at night talking to one of my kids, will you mow the grass for me before you go out? So if they're asking for something, ask for something in return. If I reduce my price as a speaker, I will have to take out the books as part of the masterclass. So they want the price down, I take something out. They come in with a lower price, I upsell the books. Take a time out, mind map it before you agree to anything like that. That's what professional negotiators do. And the final one is confidence. And if you haven't watched, and I'm sure you have, the Amy Cuddy video on TED, Fake It Till You Make It. remember that you can change the chemicals in your brain, you can change the hormones in your brain, whatever we want to call them, by just very quickly doing this body language for a couple of minutes. And Amy Cuddy is a psychologist at the Harvard Business School, and she's written this, and I find it works. Now, you know, as soon as someone does a study, someone wants to say, oh no, it doesn't work. Just try it. If you want to feel a bit more confident, do that body language that Lauren's doing down there. I tried it and it works. And I do that before I speak at a conference. I do that before I speak with people like you, because I want to feel as confident as I possibly can. But can I say to you, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't prepare, if you don't ask good questions, if you don't listen acutely, active discipline listening, if you don't read the vibes, if you don't read the signals, if you don't prepare properly with a mind map or whatever, if you don't understand the tactics when people are using tactics on you, and one of the most powerful tactics is time. So remember, when you go to a shop and it says sale ends at 5 o'clock, that's probably a negotiating tactic. The shops in the UK, I'm thinking of Magnet. Every sale ends on a Sunday, but it restarts on a Tuesday. Dreams, the bed shop, sale ends on a Monday, starts again on a Wednesday. And people get fooled by this. It's a psychological tactic. People don't want to miss out. And it comes from the work of Robert Cialdini, Influence, Science and Practice. And when you invite me back again, I will talk about the work of Cialdini. I was lucky enough to see him speak at the speaking conference in Denver, Colorado, a couple of years ago. Bargaining and haggling, if I do that for you, what will you do for me? And finally, confidence. And you may notice that the words CON are at the beginning of confidence. And because the mind-body connection for you NLPers and people that have studied psychology will know that you can con your own body instantly by having good body language or by looking up, as my mum used to say to me, look up, Derek, don't look down. Which is the other thing, of course, if you text a lot and you got your text, if you got your body in that sort of negative position, of course, you're not going to feel confident. So as my physio says to me, stand up for every 17 minutes, Derek, stand up, stretch your back, look up, get your body going, etc. So these are just a few little tips, which I think about very, very important. Sonia, how long have I got? I just want to check. Professional negotiators, professional speakers always finish on time.
You are 26 minutes, so perfectly on time.
26 minutes. Oh, fantastic. So I'm doing all right. I get a 5-star from you. Absolutely. So what does it say, ladies and gentlemen? Does it say impossible? Or if you just put a couple of spaces in, it says I'm possible. Whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're probably right. And you probably remember that Henry Ford said that in the 30s. People told Henry that you'd never have a mass-produced black car in that would sell worldwide. And of course he said, well, I think I can. And off he went and found another way of doing it. So when people say things are impossible, just say to yourself, I'm possible. And if one of the questions I'm most frequently asked is, what if someone says it's not negotiable? And you know what I say to them? I say, you just think that's an interesting opening negotiating tactic. I better not challenge them. I'll just think about it. I'll reflect on it, and perhaps I'll email them in a couple of days' time with my unique selling proposition, with my ideas, and see if I can get them to change their mind and think it's their idea. And ladies and gentlemen, you might have noticed that I've dropped my tone of voice. If you want to influence someone, if you want to build rapport, if you want to say something which they might not take very well, just drop your tone of voice, mirror and match their body language, mirror and match the words that they use, and gently say, that's a bit more expensive than I was expecting to pay. What can you do to help me? Or, if I pay that, my wife will go crazy, my partner will go crazy, my boyfriend will go crazy. And you wouldn't want that to happen to me, would you? What can you do to help me? And I just want to finish off with asking you, what's the difference that makes the difference? You scored yourself when I started this keynote on a scale of 0 to 100 as a negotiator. Where are you now? What action are you going to take after this keynote? Because action is the key that unlocks doors, unlocks opportunities for you. And if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. I was a bit scared to negotiate with big companies like Tesco's. I didn't buy a personal development book till I was 38. Goodness knows what I missed out on. They're all my books. They're all my books behind me. That's not a green screen, as you can tell. And I've been privileged and proud to write a book, Win-Win, How to Get a Winning Result from Persuasive Negotiations. That was 25 years after I bought my first book, the first book that was ever written by a Brit on negotiations. Most books on negotiations are written by Americans. My goal was to make it simple, easy to read, and I was privileged and proud that Pearson published it for me. So if you've got any questions, there's my email address at some stage, because I know we're running out of time. I've got about a minute left. I've been proud and privileged to be involved in the Professional Speaking Association as a director, as the president and the chairman. I'm really privileged and proud to be the first keynote speaker at this fantastic Toastmasters conference. And I can tell you the organisers of this have done an absolute fabulous job. I was texting Sonia for a little bit of information that I needed at 9 o'clock last night, and she was texting me back. So go out, negotiate, even if it's with your family today, and just think it through and debrief yourself on how it went. My name's Derek Arden. It's been a privilege and an honour to speak to you this morning. Thank you.